Our correspondent Syed Puriza from London joins us. Also from London, we have Keith Pilbeam, economist and author. All right, Syed, first over to you. Tell us more about this big figure that we're looking at, or that the UK people in the UK are looking at here.
It is the figure, Kaveh, that had been on the pipeline with the Bank of England doing it a fourth time, the purpose being to contain the unbridled inflation. But what people are concerned about, Kaveh, is the cost of living crisis here. The cost of living crisis that some would argue is turning into a cost of living crisis, and catastrophe rather, that is a direct result, some would argue, of the policies that this government, supported by none other than the opposition Labour Party, has been pursuing in relation to, in particular, to prolonging the what they call the proxy war against Russia in Ukraine. The sanctions, for example, that they have imposed are blowing back. Those sanctions are not having, experts say, the kind of impact that they had hoped for on Russia. Instead, they're having a direct impact on the cost of living crisis for millions of Britons. And it's easy to look around and see it happening. The prices are up, food prices are up, energy prices are up, and some would argue that there is this real potential risk of a shortage of both by the end of the year. And I may add that it's all happening today, May 5th, as millions across the UK are going to the polls to cast their ballots in local elections, normally about which candidate has the best plan in terms of waste management and access to hospitals and the maintenance of roads. But the several people that I talked to since 7 a.m. this morning when the polls open, at least here in London, the English capital, where the Labour Party has a vast support, said, look, other than those issues, they're also thinking of these major national issues, such as the Partygate scandal, tax hikes, and in particular, the cost of living crisis. We're going to see that have an impact on the way people vote in the coming hours until 10 p.m., and also the kind of impact that will have on the Conservative Party and the leadership of Prime Minister Boris Johnson at the top of the Conservative Party. Kaveh.
So Keith Pilbeam, are we looking this situation to be a direct result solely because of what is happening regarding the Ukraine conflict, or are there other factors compounding this?
It's certainly not all due to Ukraine conflict. That is one of the big lies that the Tory party would like to spread in this country. The fact is, it's a combination of things, okay? The word that shouldn't be mentioned, according to the government, Brexit, has definitely increased the costs of operating businesses, bureaucracy, paperwork, transport costs. Much of that is due to Brexit, all right? The second thing is the governor of the Bank of England himself. He printed money like crazy under instructions last year to finance the 300 billion fiscal deficit. So if you just print money like that and the goods are falling in supply while the money supply is increasing, guess what? You get inflation. We teach all our economic students this in year one, all right? And no one has printed more money in such a short term as this particular governor, called Andrew Bailey, who I actually nickname him Andrew Failey, because he's failed to do his job. 1% interest rate is not gonna, it's actually a negative interest rate of 9%, because in real terms, because inflation is headed now to 10%. And the Bank of England forecasts have been persistently wrong. I mean, it's all documented in their inflation report. They said, oh, inflation might reach 5%, then it might reach 7%. Today, it's going to reach over 10. Growth. They've been persistently optimistic about growth. Okay, they've got all these people modelling it at the Bank of England. What do they get wrong? They get the inflation forecast wrong because they underestimate it, and they get the growth figure wrong and they overestimate it. It's almost like a golden rule of incompetence. All right? They should have been raising interest rates some time ago and stop printing the money. and the balance sheet needs to be dramatically reduced. They bought all this rubbish, printed money. They've artificially distorted interest rates. That's encouraged zombie firms. There's been over borrowing. The furlough scheme, a failure of incompetent government. It's not just incompetent Bank of England governor. I mean, Rishi Sunak has, run the biggest fiscal deficits going, which has stoked up aggregate demand, and now he's not got the guts to bring that fiscal deficit under control in a proper fashion, and he's wasted so much money as well. So, incompetence of the government of the highest order. All right, so you've got all these problems, but with policymakers that are totally incompetent and a government that's totally incompetent.
All right, well, let's take a listen to some of the online posts on this and see if there's incompetence in those viewer comments or not. But let's see what they have to say. Our first post, current inflation is much higher in the UK than reported. This country has been fiddling statistics for years. Whatever they report, you should add a few percentage more. Next, the UK and Europe are facing the risk of a recession, or more accurately, stagflation. The kind of inflation the world is seeing will lead to demand destruction. The poor will be hit hardest. Rich countries, hoping to use the Ukraine war to fight Putin via a proxy, will need to reassess. Right now in the UK, we have record high tax, inflation heading for 10%, plus record level debt, underfunded services, low wages, record levels of food banks, increased poverty. Also increased wealth gap, a housing bubble, interest rates going up, record high rail fares, and cuts in welfare. Our next post, UK has so far provided £1.15 billion to Ukraine for their war. Despite rapidly growing food and energy poverty, inflation, etc., with no end in sight, what will we ultimately pay out, I wonder? And our final post here, looks like they are going to get the worst of all worlds. Interest rates too low to stop inflation, but not low enough to prevent a recession. Okay, those were some great viewer comments. I don't know if you listened to all of them, Saeed, but I must say it's been a while since I read viewer comments that were so, at least in the way I see it, well-founded. Saeed, tell us more about this particular viewer comment that says, that you pointed out also, in terms of the rising living costs. And for example, what was so alarming is hearing about how cooking oil is being rationed in the UK.
Yes, as we've been reporting recently, Kaveh, the rising cost of living, of course, impacting people, their purses on a day-to-day basis. An increase in the prices of the stuff you buy at the grocery store on a daily basis, from fruit to bread to eggs to margarine to other things. Every time you have to, well, not definitely every single day, but every now and then you seem to have to pay more to buy just about the same thing that you would have not too long ago. And that means more people having been pushed into poverty as a result of the cost of living going up. And then there's the issue of energy costs increasing by more than 50%. That took effect in April. I'll give you a personal example. I was away for almost a month. We weren't even home, with nothing on except for the refrigerator. And I would have hoped to have paid at least half of what I have been asked to pay to my provider. For some other people, and a very small increase, even £30, £40 a month, will be unaffordable, especially come the cold season, which is only a few months away, although we have just started experiencing some warm weather here. Meaning people in the not too distant future, millions of people might have to choose between what is referred to as eating or heating. So very tough time ahead for a lot of people who are the direct victims of this massive increase in the cost of living in this country.
Okay. Keith Pilbeam, you pointed out to the interest rate hike. That's the fourth one, I believe. since the end of 2021. But it's not working. It doesn't, at least so far. So what do you, and you said that might have a negative effect if I recall correctly what you said. So what needs to be done here? Where and how is the government failing, or what can it do to stop the inflation from continuing to increase?
Well, you see, once inflation starts, it's actually very difficult to get rid of. You see, so the Bank of England missed the opportunity to avoid all this some time ago. All right, it should have been raising interest rates substantially some time ago. All right, and it's too little, too late. And in fact, this 1% is not going to make any difference. All right, interest rates at 1% with inflation headed to 10. As I say, in economics, we call it a negative real return of 9%. All right. So in fact, you've got savers are getting killed, all right, because they're earning 1%, but the cost of living is going up 10. So you don't really want to save. Firms don't want to invest because they're uncertain about the future. Interest rates could be hiked and quite substantially because we've let inflation genie out. And the Bank of England governor, let's be clear, has just been saying to everyone, I hope you don't ask for a big pay rise this year, okay? So you're going to have a 10% rise in prices, but, you know, try to settle for 2 or 3% wage rise. Well, that's fine, okay, for, you know, but people aren't going to like that. That's a 7% cut in your real wage. It's very simple economics. You're 7% worse off in real terms. And so there's going to be a lot of people next year wanting to catch up simply because they can't take a 7% cut. And at the end of the day, you have to look at what's going wrong in society. And there's so many things going wrong in Britain that it's just staggering. There's so many issues. There's too many bureaucrats, all right, far too many bureaucrats, and money being wasted on bureaucracy. So let's save some of that. The tax system needs radical reform, all right? It's completely, you know, I'll be polite on the TV, but it's completely non-functional, all right? So you need to collect tax off people that can afford it, not people who can't, all right? So like the recent income tax, national insurance, it's 13.25% up to 50,000, then it suddenly drops to 3.25%, all right, benefiting the rich people. So you could do a lot there, all right? Let's make it 10% for everybody at all income levels, for example. It'd be a lot simpler and a lot fairer, and actually would save a lot of people some money, and some billionaires and multi-millionaires have to pay a bit more. You've got to look at inheritance tax, actually. I mean, you know, there's all these old people, many of them voted for Brexit. They're, you know, they're living in big houses that have gone up a lot in price. Is it a good thing for society that they just leave it all to their sons and daughters? I don't know. Some of that wealth can be spread, you see. So there's a lot of decisions need to be made, and it needs to be much more radical. Just doing a little bit here, a little bit there is not going to lead to any progress, okay? And we need to educate kids and make them more productive as well.
Thank you, sir.
And invest in them so that they can actually pay tax in the future rather than, you know, have a life of poverty and, you know, and we know it can lead to all sorts of other social consequences that are very costly for society to tackle. So major reform is needed. And tinkering here or there is not going to make much difference.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. I wish we could continue this. Keith Philbin there, economist and author from London, and also from London, Said Pourreza. It's great to see you. And with that, we come to an end for this news review. Thanks for tuning in.